Hello and welcome to the Grid Talk podcast, where we'll be reviewing last weekend's Belgian Grand Prix and previewing this weekend's Italian Grand Prix. Hosting today will be me, George Howson, and joining me today are Mikael.
Hi.
And Ruby Price.
Hi.
Hey, so, great race this weekend, I think it's fair to say. However, outside of Formula One, on track, there's been an absolute tragedy. I think it's right to start the show really with Anthoine Hubert, who tragically lost his life during the Formula 2 race on Saturday. A massive loss to the grid, only 22 years of age, had a very bright future ahead of him. I struggle to really put it into words how horrible it is what's happened, but we have to talk about it. Charles Leclerc, who won the race this weekend, did dedicate his first Formula One win to Hubert. I mean, kind of try and sum this up, Ruby. It's your first time on the show. Just lost for words really when it comes to it.
Yeah, it's like you said when we were talking about it earlier. You sometimes forget how dangerous motorsport is, but we get complacent in how we just, we see massive accidents and cars literally being reduced down to the crash structure and people just walking away from it. But, every now and then this happens and it just sort of hits home how serious motorsport actually is.
I mean, the place where it happened was Eau Rouge, a corner that is absolutely flat out in today's cars, but the speeds they travel are doing 180, 170 miles an hour in a Formula 2 car, and just a horrible set of circumstances led to the accident. But it's not a case of, in a way, it's not a case of complete complacency in terms of the rules when it comes to on-track people, like it was with Bianchi. This was just a horrible accident involving him and Correa, who I should say as well, Correa is in hospital. He is stable. But I think it's going to be a good time until he's out there racing again. He might not race for the rest of the year, to be honest. Mikael, you can have a word as well. It's really hard to get over another tragedy in motor racing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's awful, and I mean we just have to consider the fact that Hubert was a childhood friend of pretty much all of the French current F1 drivers. So he would have probably joined the grid in a few years, which we're not with anyone else. So it's an awful loss for everyone, and it's sad because obviously the rules and all the mechanic stuff is going towards being more safe, make the sport more safe. And then you have these kinds of freak accidents because having another car T-boning you at 300 kilometers per hour, you wouldn't expect that to happen. So yeah, it's very unfortunate, of course, and our thoughts go to his family and everything.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers with his family, and also with Juan Manuel Correa as well, because he's got a lot of recovering to do. But hopefully, he'll be back sooner than later. But yeah, let's get on to the race itself, which was a really good race. Charles Leclerc got his first win in Formula One, long overdue. Ferrari's first win of 2019. But it didn't come easily, did it, Ruby?
No, I was sat with my fingers crossed hoping that he'd actually be able to fend off Hamilton in the last couple of laps, because I actually predicted Charles, Lewis, Valtteri as my final three. And that just watching Lewis creep up at the end was just sort of nail-biting the finish, potentially denying Charles his debut win, maiden win in Formula One.
He got the job done in the end. Ferrari have come more than close in Canada and Bahrain, and Charles Leclerc again in Austria. I think it's more than deserved, really, isn't it, Mikael? He's had to wait a while for it, hasn't he?
I mean, yeah, he definitely deserved this win. I mean, I know in the last podcast last week I said that I don't know whether he's gonna win this season. I mean, I'm glad to be proven wrong. But I mean, Ferrari did screw up Vettel's strategy. That very well could have been Leclerc that got screwed in that. But I mean, it's been long overdue, and he's totally deserved it now. I hope it continues to Monza the form.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention about Vettel as well, because Ferrari qualified 1-2, were running 1-2 for most of the race, and decided to hit Vettel early. And at the time, it seemed like it was a really good decision. Vettel came out ahead of Leclerc, but the tyres just completely went off towards the end, and he ended up slipping down to fourth. I mean, it's pretty obvious to say it wasn't the right call, but was it the right call to pit Vettel that early, Ruby?
Like you say, at the time, it seemed to everyone like a bit of a master stroke. By the time everyone finished their pit stops, he was in first. The problem was Ferrari's long runs just weren't as good as Mercedes, and I think that also reflected in the fact Charles was under so much pressure at the end as well. The Ferrari was just a lot more degrading towards its tyres than the Mercedes, and Vettel probably, if he'd have pitted a bit later, I think we still would have seen the Mercedes overtake him, just based on what happened with Charles.
Yeah, the Mercedes were a lot faster than Ferrari, especially towards the end. But I personally think that if they pitted Vettel at the same time as Leclerc, they probably would have got a 1-3, because Bottas was a long way behind Hamilton. I've just got the results up here. Bottas was about 12 seconds behind Hamilton. I think that Vettel would have been able to hold off Valtteri towards the end, wouldn't you say, Mikael?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, I mean, it was a lost opportunity for Ferrari to get two cars on the podium, because I don't really think that Bottas would have been able to actually beat them. I mean, it was interesting to see, because Mercedes kind of did make a dummy move again on Ferrari by taking their guys out and then having Ferrari pit Vettel, and neither one of the Mercedes came in. So I don't know if that was again like a strategy decision from them, or if they were actually pondering on taking for maybe Bottas in at the same time. But I mean, yeah, I think it would have been a certain 1-3, a possible 1-2, depending on how well Vettel's tires would have blasted in the case he had pitted 10 laps later. So yeah, a lost opportunity anyway.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, some would say that Hamilton not winning the race was also a lost opportunity, but he did gain points on his main two title rivals. Valtteri Bottas was third, so he's gained 3 points there. Max Verstappen crashed out of the race in the first lap. We'll obviously get on to him later. So Hamilton's position at the top of the standings, despite not winning, is even more secure than it was before, Ruby.
Yeah, I read a statistic yesterday that I'm hearing an echo. But yeah, I heard a statistic yesterday that if Bottas wins every race and Lewis finishes second, Lewis has still won the championship.
Wow. God, it's a big lead. I'm going to check how much the lead is now, actually.
I think it's 65 points or something like that, so it's a massive one at this point.
Well, remember, Mikael, 65 points. That is not too far off 3 wins.
Yeah.
So that is a huge lead. I mean, I mentioned in the last episode about Hamilton being champion-elect. I think it's even more secure in a way now, isn't it, Mikael?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if Bottas has a lot of, we have the Russian Grand Prix and then maybe Abu Dhabi that are classic, have been strong for Bottas in earlier seasons. But I mean, Monza, I doubt he's going to beat Hamilton. Singapore, kind of the same. So I just don't see it happening. And I mean, with Verstappen being so far behind and it's still driving Red Bull, I think we could call this season over already.
Yeah. But there's a lot of fighting further down the grid. I think what also is hurting Bottas is that Ferrari seem stronger. I mean, they did really well last year at Belgium. Owain laughed at me last episode when I said that Vettel was going to get second because Ferrari should be stronger. But I think what's going to hurt Bottas as well is that Ferrari are going to get more wins between now and the end of the season, and that's going to curtail his chances of getting more points back. When you say, Ruby?
Yeah, there's still a couple of Ferrari expected to be dominant tracks coming up. We've got Monza next week, and Mercedes always struggle around Singapore, usually. So really, Bottas will be praying that they're not Ferrari-dominated tracks this year.
Yeah, but Bottas doesn't have to worry about his contract at least now, because it was announced between this and the last show that Bottas will stay at Mercedes until next year, if not the year after. I think there's a potential 2-year deal there for him. But yeah, really good for him. And also should mention that Esteban Ocon, guy that I said, oh yeah, there's rumours about him going to Renault for next year. Well, he's going in place of Nico Hulkenberg, who's now going to be looking for another drive elsewhere. Apparently Haas is the likely destination for him. But yeah, back to the race. 5th place, and it was looking for a long time as though it wouldn't have been a good result for him, this race, but 5th in the end. Alexander Albon, his first race for Red Bull, started down in 17th because of an engine change. Struggled for a lot of the race down at the tail end of the points, but he got the job done in the end, didn't he, Mikael?
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, it did seem like he would struggle to even get to, P10, P9, fighting behind Gasly and Fiat and Toro Rosso's. But I mean, in the end, I don't know whether he was just being conservative with the tires, which would have been would look like a smart move in this case, or if the car just came alive at the last 10, 15 laps. But I mean, as a result, 5th place, so the best one they probably could have hoped for after Verstappen crashed out. Yeah, I mean, it's a very good start. But I mean, the Toro Rosso also did very well, so it's not like, he was the standout piece of the Red Bull Academy.
Yeah, debatably, yeah. I mean, the Toro Rossos both did well, both finished in the points. What do you think, Ruby? Do you think it was a case of Albon being on the medium tyres and just being conservative in the early stages? Because he couldn't even get past the Renaults or Giovinazzi's Alfa Romeo in the early stages.
Yeah, it did look as though he was going to be not the lead Honda Red Bull driver in the finish, but that that stop that he made when he did just sort of changed everything, and all of a sudden Albon was just sort of climbing up the field, really. It did seem as though he would need to be conservative with the soft tyres that he was using, so in order to make them last until the end of the race. So yeah, maybe it was just his driving style just suits driving conservatively.
Perhaps that's the case, yeah. So a good race for him. A really bad race, though, for Max Verstappen. It lasted all of 2 corners. Collision with Kimi Räikkönen in the first corner. Mikael shaking his head. I'm sure he wasn't too pleased about that. But yeah, so a bit of a dumb question potentially. I think I know what your answer is going to be, Mikael. But whose fault was it into la source? Räikkönen's or Verstappen's?
I mean, the funny thing with the crash yesterday was it was like a copy of their crash in, I don't know, was it 2016, 2017? But anyway, pretty much the same thing with having, I think it was Perez between them, and then he just backing off and Kimi turning in. I don't know. On this one, I wouldn't go like completely as Verstappen's fault, because there is, like, Kimi did have room on the left. At the same time, I mean, Verstappen was kind of just, it seemed like he was trying to make up for having a crappy start, losing already 2 positions, so he just wanted to push inside. And I mean, we saw how well Norris did going inside, so maybe he was thinking of that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a racing incident, but yeah, I think Max was the catalyst on that one.
Martin Brundle did lay the blame at Verstappen. He said that Räikkönen wouldn't have been able to see Verstappen in his mirrors, and he's a man who knows better than all of us about how hard it is to drive these cars. What would you say, Ruby? Is anybody to blame for this one, or is it firmly at the feet of Verstappen?
I feel as though it's very much Max Verstappen going into a position that's always going to get smaller. La Source is a bit of a very tight hairpin, and you're at the start of the race, so no one really is 100% on what's going on around you. But like you say, it is very much a racing incident where, they're going to be very lenient with who is actually to blame. And whilst, as Mikael said, Max was the catalyst, Räikkönen probably could have also been a little bit further to the left.
Yeah, racing incident in the day. It ruined both of their races. Räikkönen did finish, but all the way down in 16th in a lap down. Wasted opportunity for him there, I guess you could say. Yeah, I said in my bold prediction for Belgium that Sergio Perez would end his pointless streak, and he did. He finished 6th. Brilliant race for him, wouldn't you say, Mikael?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a very good race for him. I mean, the entire weekend was outstanding considering the last, you know, what, 7 races of not scoring points. So getting 8 points. I mean, this is the funny part. Like now he's above Stroll again in the standings, which kind of ruins our entire grading system for him from last week. But I mean, yeah, amazing result. Could have been 5th as well. I mean, Albon did just catch him in the last lap and overtake him. But I mean, yeah, I mean, overall, a very good result for him and the entire team with Stroll finishing 10th as well.
Yeah, I was going to get onto that. Stroll scores points as well. He got a point for 10th. Another person who got a great race this time was Daniel Kvyat in Toro Rosso. He beat his new teammate, Pierre Gasly. He finished 7th, Gasly down in 9th. A great weekend for Toro Rosso around a track where you really wouldn't expect him to do well, Ruby.
No, that Honda power unit seems to be putting out quite some power, really, which has sort of been the trend for the last 2 seasons. They just haven't had the car to be challenging at places like Spa. But when Pierre Gasly was the lead Red Bull driver for the majority of the race, I was a bit surprised, really, because it just sort of seemed to come out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, did very well. I think they just kept in the slipstream. It was a big DRS train, basically. Kvyat, Hülkenberg, Stroll, Gasly, Magnussen, Grosjean, they were all in the same train. They were all just sort of towing each other along. And that was the big lap traffic that could have caused a lot of problems for Leclerc towards the end of the race. But yeah, I mentioned him there, Nico Hülkenberg. He's been dropped for Renault for next year, but had a good race for Renault. And for the majority of it, him and Ricciardo were really struggling. Do you think he's been a bit hard done by Hülkenberg being dropped by Renault, Mikael?
No, not really. I mean, an 8th place finish. I mean, considering the form of this season, it's fine for Hülkenberg and Renault. But I mean, it wasn't really. There wasn't anything outstanding going on in the race. And yeah, it was kind of like just a regular day at the office, pretty much for Hülkenberg again. Like he just drove on to the 8th place, pretty much. And I mean, Ricciardo being so far down, I'm sure we're going to come back to it. But I read somewhere that he drove the entire race almost with just one set of mediums. So a weird tactical call there.
Yeah, he did. I just kept thinking to myself, when is he going to come in? He's got to come in. But I think he pit in the safety car period right at the start because of Verstappen's crash. And ran the entire race, like 42 out of 44 laps on mediums. So he was in the points for a bit, but he just slid down completely towards the end. But yeah, now another guy who slid down right towards the end, Lando Norris, 11th place, absolutely gutted for him. He won the driver of the day, absolutely deserved it, ran around in 5th for almost the entire race. And on the last lap, his engine went, he got across the line, but it wasn't enough. He ended up 11th, no points. So unlucky for McLaren, both mechanical issues for him and Sainz. But encouraging in terms of the pace they were showing, wouldn't you say, Ruby?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about, where McLaren were 2 or 3 years ago, being up in 5th for almost the entirety of Spa would have just been crazy for them back then. But it's like you say, it's a massive shame for Sainz, especially. It's a great birthday present, not really finishing 3 laps. And then Norris on the last lap, just not even making it past La Source. It's a big shame, really. Lots of points dropped as well.
Yeah, a lot of points. That's 10 points dropped. However, Renault didn't exactly have a great day. Toro Rosso, I keep forgetting they're in 5th in the Constructors' Championship. So still a 31-point gap between McLaren and the next best of the rest challenger. So still a great season for them. Now, a team that aren't having a great season, Haas. And I just couldn't believe how bad they were. They were up in Magnussen and Grosjean after the safety car were 6th and 7th, I think, something like that. but they just slid down the order. Like Grosjean was saying, he was losing 20 kilometers of power down the straight just because of the bad tires that we had, and that's with the most powerful power unit on the grid. It's just, I mean, what can Haas do to try and fix this, Mikael? It's just a absolute calamity at that team at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so weird how they're able to get a one lap together in qualifying. I mean, yesterday's qualifying or this weekend's qualifying was amazing for Haas, considering like the slump they've been in, and now having, with the penalties, obviously, both cars starting in the top 10, and after Verstappen and Raikkonen crashed out, running somewhere around the 7th place both. So I mean, there's got to be something fundamentally wrong with the car, I guess. Like that's the only thing that you could really see as an actual reason. Because Grosjean complaining on the tires, maybe the car just completely grinds the tires down, but it's weird. And he was doing well. I mean, I was surprised to see Magnussen just completely drop down to like somewhere around 11th, 12th place, with Grosjean still driving 7th, and then just dropping down even behind Magnussen. It's just odd.
I think this time it might have been a case of them just losing the grip from the tyres because they had to push the car so hard. I mean, there is a fundamental issue with that car, isn't there, Ruby?
Yeah, and I think it's Grosjean that's gone back to the Australian spec. Just sort of, when they're still doing the sort of performance that we saw yesterday with a car that they thought was which was better than the upgraded car that they've got. I think it just shows there's something wrong with the whole car's philosophy, really. They did well in Australia, but they haven't really done well at all overall for the rest of the season in comparison to that. And it might not necessarily just be a development thing, as they've suggested, by splitting 2 different cars. But they don't know what the answer is, clearly.
Yeah, so we're just going to have to speculate in the meantime. But if there's any track that's going to help them, it's Monza. But they had the track position in this one and still didn't perform, really. But yeah, even worse than that was Daniel Ricciardo. And we mentioned his strange strategy, doing almost the entire race on one set of tyres and ended up in 14th, just absolutely nowhere. I mean, Renault, they're in 6th in the Constructors' Championship. I was saying that they'd be shoo-ins to get best of the rest this year, 4th, but they're going to struggle to get 5th at this rate, aren't they, Mikael?
Yeah, and I still don't understand why they didn't pit Ricciardo at, like, let's say 15 laps before for softs, just because he could have easily gained up ground, at least to, fight for points. I mean, the car is not perfect. The drivers are not stellar, and apparently the strategy department is also shit. So I don't know what they can do. I mean, at this point they're gonna lose to Toro Rosso as well, which for teams the size of Renault and the financial backing of Renault, I mean, it's just awful.
Yeah, it's pretty humiliating, isn't it? I mean, you touched on it there, Mikael. I think that as soon as I can understand the strategy, just leaving him out there, see what he could do. But as soon as he dropped out of the points, or it was apparent that he was going to drop out of the points, you should have hit him and put him on the fast tyres. They had nothing to lose at that stage. Just baffling strategy. But yeah. So moving on, Williams again finished the race. That's all you can really say about them. Russell 15th, Kubica 17th. Just no, I mean, they're there. They're on the timings. You only see them on the timings. You never see them unless they're being lapped, really. Anything you want to add about them, Ruby?
I mean, it all looked a bit promising, really, didn't it, back in Hungary? George Russell actually being able to drive amongst other cars. But yeah, I think, just the complexity of Spa, it's got the very long straights and then fast corners as well. We know the Williams package is really weak around everything, really. It's just, if the fact that they didn't finish joint last and penultimate last is a step they can take, I guess, even though the car that they beat was severely handicapped.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, they'd beat a world champion. They could say that.
Yeah, Williams will say that, but 15th and 17th is not where Williams, a
No.
team of that history, should be fighting.
No, I mean, they only have a point from an absolute fluke of a race in Germany, and then they required 2 disqualifications to do it. I mean, let's hope it at least better. We can hope, but in reality, it's going to take until at least next year for them to be competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if they just abandoned this car and just thought, right, let's just focus on 2020. Let's focus for the regulation changes in 2021. So yeah. Now let's touch on Alfa Romeo. I said that Giovinazzi would get points this weekend, and he so nearly did. He was in about, 7th, 8th, something like that.
Yeah.
And looking really, really fast on the new soft tyres, something that Ricciardo should have done. But just went wide at Pouon, got spat out into the barriers, horrible crash. When it happened, my heart sunk. I thought, oh no, not again. But thank God he's all right and he's fine. But a huge wasted opportunity. A bit of a rookie hour, really, wouldn't you say, Mikael?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually the mistake that cuts him off of the grid for next year. The thing is, there are still a lot of promising drivers still, without any places from F2 and otherwise as well. So maybe if Hülkenberg doesn't get the Haas place, he might go to Alfa Romeo. Who knows? But I mean, yeah, it was very disappointing to see him in the wall. And scary as well, as you mentioned. But yeah, I mean, at this point, he just doesn't have enough good performances in his CV to actually make a case for him next year.
Yeah, his place is definitely under threat for next year. So, Lando Norris got the best driver of the day. I honestly, I'd give it him 2, to be honest. What would you 2 say?
Yeah, I voted for Lando Norris in the driver of the day.
Mikael?
Yeah, I mean, Lando or Charles, pretty much. So.
Yeah, I think those are the 2 standouts, weren't they? Yeah. Moving ahead to Italy, another power circuit, the power circuit, and Ferrari haven't won there since 2010. Fernando Alonso, back in those days. Let's get the predictions in. Who do you think's going to win? Ferrari are going to be strong for this one, surely. Same with you, Mikael. Who are you backing for the win in Italy?
I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that Charles' form, as well as his mechanics and strategy, people's form is going to be great. So I would go for Charles to win, and then I mean it's a throw of dice, really. I'll go with Hamilton second and Vettel third. There's bound to be some mistake again. So yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Ruby, who's on your podium?
Yeah, I was going to say, as long as Ferrari don't have any sort of weaknesses that we've seen before, I would hopefully expect to see Charles on the podium, well, on the top step with the form that he's on and the fact that Ferrari is supposed to be strong around Monza. Again, with Mikael, it's really just, will Vettel make another mistake and put Hamilton and Valtteri in the other 2? If not, he'll probably finish third or something like that. Yeah.
I think getting that first win under his belt for Leclerc is just going to spur him on. I think he's going to win again this next weekend. You know what? I'm going to be passionate. I'm going to go for a Ferrari 1-2. I think the strategy is relatively simple in Monza. I'm going to go Leclerc, Vettel, and then Hamilton to be on the podium because the guy's in the form of his life, and I don't see Red Bull challenging. Verstappen said after he retired that Red Bull are going to be not too great in Monza, and there's nobody else anywhere near to challenge really. That's my podium. Now let's do some bold predictions again. I think they were quite fun last time. I'm gonna repeat the one that I got wrong from last week. I'm gonna say Giovinazzi in the points, but he has to not stick it in the wall this time. Obviously, the Alfa Romeo is going to be good round there. I won't be too surprised if they're best the rest behind the Red Bulls. because just that they're really good in the straight line. They've always been topping the speed traps, so I expect them to be good there. Ruby, what's your bold prediction?
McLaren, one of them top 7, I reckon.
Okay.
Yeah.
That could happen. What do you think, Mikael? What's the bold call you're making?
Double points for Haas. 4 cars in the point. They should have the straight line speed with the engine they have. It's just a question of whether or not they can get everything else together.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it's the tyre wear for them, isn't it? It can't be the aerodynamics. I think it's the tyre wear that's really killing them. And it's always a one-stop round Monza, so I think they'll really struggle to get points. But if they're going to get points anywhere, it's here. It's at Monza. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know if you two have seen the news as well around Formula One. They've announced the calendar for next year, a record 22 races, and Spain is retained. Spain is still on the calendar. Everybody was saying it was going to go in place of the Netherlands, but Spain is back for next year. Good news, Ruby?
Yeah, I mean, we go to Spain to do pre-season testing. It just wouldn't really be right to not have Spain on the calendar. And it's a circuit that produces unexpected races. Yeah, it would be wrong to not be there.
Yeah, I think it's a decent track. I just think it's very difficult to overtake round, but there's a lot of tracks like that, especially with the current formula of cars. Mikael, what do you think about the new calendar? 22 races, is that too many? Or are you excited to see more races as a fan?
I mean, yeah, I'm excited to see more races. There are some races that I'm, would maybe take off the calendar just, as being a bit too gimmicky, I guess. But I mean, yeah, I'm happy to see 22 races. Happy to see Spain stay. Happy to have one in Zandvoort in Netherlands. Don't throw away from here. So, yeah, I mean, it's great. Spain, I'm happy it stays for the heritage and everything. I've never been a huge fan of the layout of the course, as you mentioned. It's difficult to overtake, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy that it stays. Because as Ruby mentioned, it makes sense that, we do testing there, so we should have a race there as well.
Yeah, I agree. And as a fan as well, because I've been to Spanish Grand Prix, I'm glad it's staying on the calendar. It's a great event to go to, especially being so close to Barcelona, a great city there. This kind of slips under the radar. I only found this out from Channel 4's highlights, but Sergio Perez has been signed on for Racing Point until 2022, a 3-year deal. I mean, I expect Lance Stroll to get a contract like that. He's going to get a contract for life, really. You think? But it's his dad who's the team boss. He's not going to sack his own son, is he? But Perez dedicating himself. I mean, that'll be a 9-year stint that people have said. I'm shocked he's staying there for so long, Ruby.
Maybe he's got a very sizable contract. Everyone was tipping Sergio Perez to end up at Ferrari at one point.
Yeah.
When he was performing really well. But, I guess he's sort of, that speculation obviously stopped a couple of years ago, but, Racing Point, when they perform, are a really decent outfit. Why break the consistency?
No, fair enough. What do you think, Mikael? Right decision for Perez to stay at Racing Point for another 3 years?
I mean, I was surprised when I saw the news, really, because I thought he would, if he wasn't moving up, he would retire in 2021, for example. But, I mean, maybe there is, of course, something in the contract that we don't know that made him stay. And, I mean, maybe the new regulations in 2021 with Daddy Stroll money, I mean, they might be up there. We saw Force India doing very well when they, had the advantage over others in the best of the rest category. So maybe he's looking towards that, and maybe, I mean, there isn't really a lot of seats necessarily coming available before 2021. So at least this way he'll stay in the grid.
Fair enough. I mean, his guy's place secure. That's the main thing. Obviously, Lance Stroll, he's not confirmed for next year, but we all know he'll be there. They're waiting for a quiet time to be like, oh yeah, he's staying at the team because it's such an unpopular decision, obviously. But I think he's a little bit hard done by in some ways. But then again, I think there's so many drivers that would be much more suited to that seat than Stroll is a bit average, really, in my opinion. But yeah, that's the Grid Talk podcast. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Ruby and to Mikael for being on this edition. Thanks for getting up so early in the morning for us, Ruby.
Thanks.
But yeah, we'll be back next week to review the Italian Grand Prix, which is on this weekend. But yeah, stay tuned to the F1 Chronicle as well for that. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.